Cik A.
1, 2, 3. Segini.
Cik A 1, 2, 3 dicoba. Hi A 1 menit.
Oke. Balik masih ada suara. Satu, dua, tiga, masuk nih. Tes. Tadi sempat nggak masuk. 1, 2, 3. Cek kontes. Cek kontes. 1, 2, 3. Tes 1, 2, 3. Cek kontes 1, 2, 3. Masuk. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Segitu cukup. Kalau segini 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Cek kontes 1, 2, 3. Cek kontes 1, 2, 3. Segitu cukup.
Welcome to Bali International Convention Center. You are now on ground floor. In case of any emergency, we are going to inform you using our public announcement system.
Your attention, ladies and gentlemen. This is an emergency announcement.
In case of any emergency, we ask you not to panic, not to run, not to use elevator. In case of fire emergency, then we will take you out to the flagpoles area near the parking lot. In case of earthquake emergency, during the shaking, we ask you to do drop, cover and hold procedure until the shaking stops. If evacuation is needed, we will take you out to the flagpoles area near the parking lot. In case of tsunami emergency, when we receive tsunami warning, we will take you back inside the building.
Okay, thank you.
Then we take you up to the second and higher floor. Thank you for your attention.
Lagi di masih ya.
Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to day 3 of high-level multi-stakeholder partnership And thank you for joining us this afternoon in a critical side event session on innovative financing to accelerating SDG 16 in Indonesia. This panel is organized by Indonesia Judicial Research Society, or IJRS, and Open Society Foundation, or OSF, in partnership with the Ministry of National Development Planning of Indonesia. My name is Gregory Silsaklaba, and I'm honored to serve as your Master of Ceremony for this session. On this session, we will dive into a crucial topic of innovative financing mechanism and the role of accelerating Sustainable Development Goal 16 on peace, justice, and strong institutions. So, ladies and gentlemen, we would like to inform that we are providing souvenirs, so you can grab on your seat or on your table. And we also provide simultaneous interpreter in English and Bahasa, so you can use if you need it. Before we dive into our panel discussion today, we will first hear some opening remarks from Mrs. Tari Lestari, the Director of National Financial and Monetary Analysis of Ministry of National Development Planning, and Mrs. Arsa Ilmi Budiarti as Director of Indonesia Judicial Research Society. So first, I would like to please welcome Mrs. Tari to give the first opening remarks. Mrs. Tari, the stage is yours.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam Om Swastiastu. First of all, I would like to extend a special welcome to all distinguished guests, esteemed colleagues and participants, to Ibu Arsa Ilmi Budiarti, Executive Director of Indonesia Judicial Research Society, Bapak Marcelino Latu Putih, Program Manager of Access to Justice and Good Governance, Indonesia Judicial Research Society, Ibu Endah Trikurniati, Director for Fundraising and Development, Environmental Fund Management Agency BPDLH, Ibu Adegani, Unit Manager, Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, Australian Embassy in Indonesia, Ibu Tomika Stephen Patterson, Resident Legal Advisor, U.S. Department of Justice, Office of Overseas Prosecutorial Development Assistant and Training, Ibu Damayanti Bukhari, Board of Penabulu Foundation, Bapak Gusman Yahya, Executive Director for Philanthropy Indonesia, and also Ibu Aisyah Ashifa, Researcher from Indonesia Judicial Research Society. Good afternoon and welcome to the High-Level Forum for Multi-Stakeholder Partnership 2024. It's an honor to address this distinguished gathering and to kick off our side event on innovative financing to accelerate SDG 16 in Indonesia. As we embark on this significant discussion, let us first recognize the vital role of Sustainable Development Goal 16 in fostering peaceful and inclusive societies, ensuring justice for all, and building effective and accountable institutions. Achieving Goal 16 is not only important aspiration in itself, but is also highly relevant for the achievement of all the other SDGs, since peace, fair justice, and good governance are conditions in which social, economic, and environmental development can flourish. In 2022, Indonesia achieved 138 SDGs indicators, or 62% of the all indicators. However, there are still 55 indicators that have not been met. This needs to be focused for Indonesia to achieve these indicators in 2030. Before the pandemic, we estimate that the total funds required to achieve SDGs target were $4.7 trillion US, with a financing gap around $1 trillion US. After the pandemic, The total funds needed are double to 8.7 trillion US dollars, along with the increase in financing gap to 1.7 trillion US dollar. To address these multifaceted challenges related to SDG 16, it's clear that traditional financing mechanisms alone are insufficient. We must explore and strengthen innovative financing approaches to effectively support and strengthen
Laptop
our effort. These mechanisms are essential to complement state budget as well and address complex justice reform and peace-building issues.
Beda.
Our side event today will focus on innovative financing to accelerate SDG 16 in Indonesia.
Yang pendek dong.
3 existing innovative financing schemes have been successfully implemented by Indonesia. The first one is Green Suku. From 2018 to 2022, Indonesia issued Green Suku valued at 5 billion US dollar in the global market. Next, Indonesia has experience issuing thematic bonds from 2021 to 2023. Indonesia issued SDGs bonds totaling approximately US dollar 1.3 billion, including SDGs and blue bonds. Furthermore, the market transformation for renewable energy and energy efficiency also improved. A partnership between UNDP, ESDM, the Jambi Provincial Government, and Badan Amil Zakat Nasional (Basnas) enhances access to renewable energy in Jambi Province, Indonesia by using zakat funds. In the future, we need to enhance innovative financing effort by first, strengthening the local capital market and boosting domestic interest through assistance to enhance project bankability. Second, creating a supportive environment by establishing a domestic policy framework and enhancing institutional capacity. Third, catalyzing private investment such as inviting venture capitals and philanthropists to fund projects related to SDGs. We will delve into how innovative financing mechanisms such as social impact bonds, recovery funds, trust funds, and all of them can play a crucial role in advancing our goals. Specifically, we will examine Indonesia's progress in leveraging this mechanism to address critical issues like sexual violence and environmental damage to support civil society organizations. I hope this discussion will create an immersive impact on how we approach and implement innovative financing for SDG 16. By fostering meaningful dialogue and collaboration, we can drive effective change and ensure our efforts are sustainable and impactful. I hope all stakeholders present today, from the government official, civil society representative, private sector leaders, and international partners to actively engage in this dialogue. Let's work together to build sustainable partnership and leverage diverse funding sources to drive transformative change in peace and justice. Lastly, I express my optimism for the fruitful discussion ahead and the impactful outcomes we will achieve from this discussion. Bappenas remains committed to supporting innovative approaches and collaboration that propel us towards the successful realization of SDG 16. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Tari, for your insightful opening remarks. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we will move forward into the next opening remarks from the Executive Director of Indonesia Judicial Research Society. IJRS is a civil society organization dedicated to legal research and actively support government and law enforcement agencies in promoting evidence-based policy with an interdisciplinary approach that includes sociological and economic perspective. Mrs. Arsa Ilmi Budiarti, the stage is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here today.
I want to extend my heartfelt thanks to each of you for joining these crucial discussions on the implementation of Sustainable Development Goal 16. SDG 16 is particularly significant as it aims to promote peaceful and inclusive societies, ensure access to justice for all, and build effective and inclusive societies. The work we are doing here has profound implications for the future of our societies, and your presence underscores the importance of our collective efforts. Achieving SDG 16 is a substantial challenge. It demands significant financial resources, and state budgets alone are often insufficient to tackle the complex issues related to criminal justice and reform. To meet this challenge, we need to explore and strengthen innovative financing mechanisms. Innovative financing is not a new idea. We've seen its success in other sectors, notably in environmental recovery, where diverse funding sources, including public funds, private investments, and international grants, combine to address environmental damage. In Indonesia, we're witnessing a similar shift in how we approach financing for justice. The introduction of the anti-sexual violence law is a prime example. It allows victims of sexual violence to receive compensation through alternative financing sources known as Victim Trust Fund. This demonstrates how innovative financing can enhance justice delivery and support victims effectively. Trust funds also play a crucial role for civil society organizations, providing essential financial support to continue their advocacy for justice, transparency, and human rights. However, innovative financing alone is not enough. Collaboration among stakeholders is equally important and is a key aspect of innovative financing itself. Government-to-government partnerships enable us to share best practices and pool resources, strengthening justice system across regions and countries. Equally crucial is our collaboration with civil society organizations. By combining diverse funding sources, CSOs can effectively integrate grassroots insight and community engagement, making justice more accessible and empowering initiatives at both national and local levels. These collaborative funding efforts ensure that progress toward SDG 16 is both sustainable and inclusive. I also emphasize the role of innovative financing in advancing open government principles. By diversifying funding sources and promoting transparency in fund allocation, this mechanism can enhance accountability and trust in public institutions. Collaborative funding opens opportunities for CSOs, government, and other stakeholders to work together and co-create together, ensuring better access to justice. It's essential that the platforms connecting CSOs and government remain transparent and accountable as they encourage greater public oversight and participation. This approach not only strengthens the financial sustainability of justice initiatives, but also fosters a more open and responsive government. In conclusion, innovative financing mechanisms and collaborative efforts are crucial to advancing justice reform and achieving SDG 16. By exploring and strengthening this option, we can address the complex challenge and promoting peace, justice, and strong institutions. Let us continue our work together, share ideas, and take action. Through our combined efforts, I am confident we can make significant progress toward a more resilient and inclusive societies. Lastly, I extend my deepest gratitude to all of the stakeholders who have supported and made this discussion possible, including Open Society Foundation, Bappenas Republik of the Indonesia, BPDLH, DFAT, US OPDAT, Pena Bulu Foundation, Philanthropy Indonesia, and the IGRS team. Thank you for all of your attention and participation today. I look forward to continued dialogue and hope this discussion serve as a foundation for further in-depth conversation. Wishing you a productive and insightful session ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Arsa, for your insightful opening remarks. Now we would like to invite Mrs. Arsa and Mrs. Tari to line up in the front alongside with all the speakers to take the documentation and certificate handover. Let's take a picture. 1, 2, 3. Once again. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. All the speakers, please have a seat. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are now about to dive into our panel discussion. So, I will hand over the floor to our moderator, Mr. Marcelino Latuputi, the Program Manager for Access to Justice and Good Governance of Indonesia Judicial Research Society. Mr. Marcel, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Yoris. Good afternoon, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Marcel. I'm from IGRS, Indonesia Judicial Research Society, the Program Manager of Access to Justice and Good Governance. I will be the moderator for this discussion. This topic relating to the innovative financing to support the achievement of SDGs Goal 16 on peace, justice, and strong institutions. One of the challenges in implementing SDGs Goal 16 is ensuring sustainable funding sources to achieve its goals. In Indonesia alone, there are several innovative funding mechanisms, such as the Environmental Fund Management Agency, or BPDLH, which has the authority managing environmental funds related to forestry, energy, mineral resources, carbon trading, environmental services, industry, transportation, agriculture, and other environmental fields. There is also the Education Fund Management Institute, or LPDP, which generally manage the implementation of endowment funds in the field of education in Indonesia. Both BPDLH and LPDP are endowment funds in the form public service agencies, or BLU, Badan Layanan Umum. Then back in 2022, the Indonesian government passed the law on sexual violence. One of its mandates is to establish a victim trust fund mechanism as a funding mechanism to recover the victims. Mbak Aisha, as a researcher of IJRS, will share the ongoing study, identify challenges on victim trust fund for sexual violence cases as one of the innovative funding mechanism proposed in sexual violence crime law. Before Mbak Aisha will take a first presentation, I would like to reminding all the speakers that there are 6 speakers in here and we only have 90 minutes. So please Bapak Ibu make it brief. Mbak Aisha, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Marcel. Thank you, Moderator. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Greetings to all the amazing speakers who are with us today. It's my pleasure to be here in such an important and impactful discussion. First of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Aisha. I'm a researcher in Indonesia Judicial Research Society. And for today, we'll be discussing about the role of innovative financing in ensuring access to justice in sexual violence through Victim Trust Fund. Next. Okay, let's start with the data to see why is it important for us to start thinking about innovative financing for improving access to justice, specifically for crime victims. If we look at the data on the screen, there has been a significant rise in the number of sexual violence cases over the last 3 to 4 years. The first line is the data of sexual violence cases reported to the National Commission on Sexual Violence, violence against women. And it shows that there are a rise from 2020 to 2022. In 2020, there are 1,731 cases a year. And in 2022, there are 2,228 cases a year, and it shows a significant rise in the cases. And also, for the cases reported to the Witness and Victim Protection Agency, or for Indonesians we know as LPSK, there are 486 cases in 2021, and there's a significant rise in the 2023 to 1,187 cases. And in the span of 3 years, the number of cases doubled from 487 to 1,187. And a little bit disclaimer, The data doesn't include cases reported to the service providers, agencies, or law enforcement agencies, which means the actual number could be so much higher. Next one. Okay, so in the context of Indonesia, victims of sexual violence crime have the right to access restitutions for them to get remedy. In the sexual violence crime law, restitution is a payment of compensation imposed on the perpetrators or a third party through court verdict or ruling for material and or immaterial losses suffered to the victim or their heirs. And as for the data, we can see on the screen how each year there are hundreds of restitution requests to the LPSK. And these are just numbers of those who requested for restitution. So there could be so much higher numbers of losses that victims suffered that haven't been requested for restitution to the LPSK. Okay, next. And so in the data of 2021, this data shows a more detailed information on the implementation of restitution. As we all can see, in 2021, restitution was granted to 189 protected individuals. And the amount calculated by the LPSK for sexual violence crimes, in total, there are 3,291,000,000 rupiahs. And the amount included in the indictment or persecution letter, only 700 million rupiah. And the amount granted by the court, only 425 rupiah. And we don't have the data for how many the amount of the restitution that has been successfully executed. And on the execution, only 0.1% court verdict included restitution out of total 735 analyzed verdicts, and only 1% of the restitution was paid in the span of 3 years, 2017 to 2020. Thus, the progress each year was not significant. Only one verdict of sexual violence in the case of rape out of total 657 verdicts included restitution in 2020 to 2022. So this shows the gap of the number of restitution requests and restitution included in the court verdict, let alone how many restitution was actually paid by the perpetrators. And on the other side, there still remains victims who haven't obtained their remedies. Okay, next. Okay, so this slide shows the mandate of the sexual violence crime law on victim trust fund. So this shows why we need to implement a victim trust fund, which is not only limited to sexual violence originally, because victim trust fund originally was implemented for terrorism cases where the perpetrators have gone missing or passed away. So victim trust fund was made to ensure the victims will receive remedy even though the perpetrators were not put to trial. Okay, so in the sexual violence crime law, there are restitution and recovery services for victims. And if the perpetrator is unable to pay for restitution, a restitution guarantee seizure will be conducted. In cases where the convicted perpetrator is unable to pay and the confiscated assets are insufficient, the state provides compensation to the victim through victim trust fund. So this is where the victim trust fund is and why is it important for the unpaid amount of the restitution. And the sexual violence crime law defined victim trust fund as the state compensation fund for victims of sexual violence crimes. And the sources of the victim trust fund can be obtained from several resources, namely philanthropy, public contributions, individual contributions, corporate social and environmental responsibility, other legal and non-binding sources, state budget in accordance with statutory regulations. And as stated by our moderator before, there's a mandate in our sexual violence crime law to establish the regulations regarding victim trust funds in the Article 35. Okay, next. Okay, so these are the other practices of victim trust fund that can be found in the International Criminal Court. There's a trust fund for victims, and that was established in pursuant to the Rome Statute. And also, the trust fund for victims is an independent entity responsible for providing assistance and financial support to individuals or communities who have suffered from genocide, crimes against humanity, war crimes, and aggression. And in the Netherlands, there's compensation fund for violent crimes in the Article 14C of the Netherlands Criminal Code. And it promotes the interests of victims of criminal offense, and it includes the material damage and non-material damage. Next. Okay, so this is why the Victim Trust Fund is important to ensure the implementation of the SDGs number 16, peace, justice, and strong institutions. So the SDGs number 16 includes promoting peaceful and inclusive societies, providing access to justice for all, and building effective, accountable, and inclusive institutions at all levels. Okay, so if there's lack of access to justice, means that conflicts remain unsolved, leaving individuals without protection or redress. And therefore, ensuring equal access to justice is crucial for safeguarding rights, resolving disputes, and protecting the society from systemic neglect and injustice. Next. Okay, this will be my last slide. Okay, so to wrap up my presentation, this is the importance of innovative financing through Victim Trust Fund. Okay, so the first one, why is it this important, is because Victim Trust Fund provides recovery mechanism for victims when the perpetrator is unable to pay restitution or the seized assets are insufficient or the perpetrator is not put on trial, they have gone missing or they're passed away. And the second, Victim Trust Fund provides victim recovery mechanism that can be accessed by victims to obtain compensation through the Victim Trust Fund, which includes specific service beyond cases where the perpetrator is unable to pay. And the third one is Victim Trust Fund works at the funding for victim recovery because now it's only limited to the state budget at LPSK. So it's necessary to add another funding resources through the Victim Trust Fund. Okay, so my time is up. Thank you. I'll give it to the moderator.
Thank you, Aisha, just in time. Just give applause to Aisha. I noticed several points that, referring to the data has been shown before, in the last 3 years, cases of sexual violence have tended to increase. And also, there is a gap between the restitution request submitted by LPSK and those successfully granted by the court. Therefore, it is important to have the mechanism, VTF mechanism in Indonesian criminal justice reform. The next speaker is Bu Endah Tri Kurniawati. Bu Endah currently the director of fundraising and development of BPDLH. Bu Endah will share the practice and challenges in managing the Environmental Recovery Fund as one of the innovative finance mechanism in Indonesia. Please, Bu Endah, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Pak Marcel. Good afternoon, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. So first of all, we would like to thank you for the invitation, and we do hope we can have collaboration in the future. Yeah, so we would like to share our best practice in managing Indonesian Environmental Fund. Yeah, why Indonesian Environmental is innovative financing? Because Indonesia Environmental Fund is one of national mechanism and the only one who can mobilize the fund from multi sources and deliver the fund to multi-purpose and channeling the fund using variety of financial instrument. As Bu Arsa mentioned that the innovating itself cannot work alone. We have to get support from many stakeholders. So at this point, the environmental fund is directed by 10 ministries like now, consisting of the Economic Coordinator Ministry, Ministry of Environment and Forestry, and then Ministry of Finance and other ministries as you see in the screen. And in the future, we also will have more line ministry at this point because we will get new mandate to manage Indonesian Tourism Fund, Sustainable Tourism Fund. So we will have more line ministries such as tourism ministries and also maritime and investment ministries and also state enterprise ministry. So maybe we do hope we can have more stakeholder here. So of course, as fund manager, we only focus on how we can manage the fund transparently. For the technical issue, it remains under the line ministry. So this is the programmatic of IEF. So how IEF can ensure that we can contribute to the SDG target. So in institutional level, we develop the theory of change. So we set up 5 target or program thematic. The first one regarding the value and ecosystem management. The second one regarding the renewable energy, and the third one regarding consumption and production sustainability, and the fourth one regarding health, water, and food security, and the last one regarding adaptation and pooling fund disaster. So under each programmatic level, we develop the indicator. Of course, refer to the SDG target. And then we also set up outcome target at this point regarding the, of course, gas emission reduction outcome. And then, and as you can see in the PPT, it's very small. And then right now, we have 3 financial instruments. The first one regarding the grant, as you see in the yellow color, and we also manage a revolving fund, the orange one, and also endowment fund. This is the financial instrument that we have, and the biggest one right now we have is the grant. We have around 800 million, and then for the endowment fund around 500. So why we also call it as innovative financing, because we complement state budget scheme. We earmark all the fund during the project implementation. So we can make sure all the fund will be intended to the certain target at this point. And then how we also can make sure IF can achieve or contribute to the SDG target, we also apply safeguard principle at this point. So there are 12 principal safeguard that we have right now, adopted from some international institution like the World Bank and also UNDP and so on. And then during our experience in managing the fund, what's the opportunity that we have right now? Yeah, as we know that Paris Agreement just ratified in 2015, and then I think this is good opportunity for us because there are some commitment there that developed countries should mobilize the fund, at least $1 billion per year. So it will be reviewed in 2020, should be in 2030, and then it should be increased. We're using the baseline $100 billion. And then the second one, because as I mentioned earlier that we involve many stakeholders here, and also IF can mobilize the fund from multi-sources, so we can do a kind of blended finance using multi-financial instrument. And the last one, because that one, we also can integrate the program under IF. And then another reason why we also innovative, we call it as innovative financing, because we also can deliver the fund directly to multi-beneficiaries, as I mentioned earlier. So we can directly deliver the fund to the community, private sector, and also government and so on, like NGO and so on. And then for the challenges that we have right now, of course, maybe there are still mismatch of investment scale because sometimes some project need higher investment, but maybe the value is still under value. And then no externalities monetization, still lack of externalities, I mean. And then, of course, when we talk about the green project, the high initial capital for green project is quite a big challenge for all of us, I think. And then another challenging is in valuing in green benefit. But again, maybe when IF managing the fund for the initial step right now, we are still focusing on community project and also small and micro enterprises right now. But maybe in the future, we do hope we can also provide funds to bigger community and also maybe an industry. This is just example how we can contribute the some SD targets. So in 2021 or 22, we delivered the incentive to entity installing a solar panel. So we provide incentive to the industry, to small enterprise, and also household and social building. So it can contribute to emission reduction around 20,000 CO2 equivalent per year. And then it can create a green job for 2,000 workers. And also it can mobilize a public investment around 2.6 million US dollar. This is just an example of we have done right now. The project is already closed. This is another thing, as Butari mentioned, it is important as well. We provide a catalytic fund to start up. So right now we have a catalytic fund for Indonesia Impact Fund. This is a kind of small blended finance. So we provide a grant to the startup to merge the ESG target into their business. And then after they achieve a certain level of the ESG target, they can access the capital mandiri. And this is just one of a sample. So we provide catalytic fund to the Delos. Delos is one of the startup in Banyuwangi. Delos has a business to support a woman group to process certain shrimp quality to ready to sell products like crackers and pies and also petis, we call it petis, I don't know in English. And then after that they can access the market. So this is just a sample. We also, so these activities will contribute to the SD target number 5, 8, and 9. And for the estimated project impact, we will, as you can see, we can increase their revenue around 3.5 million per month. And also, as you can see in the screen. And I think that's all from our, thank you. Back to Pak Marcel.
Give applause to Bu Tari. Thank you, Bu Enda, for the sharing of the activities by the BPDLH. As you earlier said, that innovative financing is created through collaboration and cooperation of stakeholders. Funding can come from many sources. Its utilization can be used to fund specific activities, and the most important thing that its implementation is based on good governance principle. For the next speaker, Bu Adegani, as an unit manager, Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, Australian Embassy in Indonesia, will share the Australian government's initiative investing in Indonesian CSOs to accelerate justice reform and effectively promote a locally led approach. Bu Ade, the floor is yours.
Ya, terima kasih. Thank you, Pak Marcel. Thank you everyone, and thank you for your participation in this session. Oh, sorry. My name is Adikani. I'm managing the Law and Justice Program at the Australian Embassy in Jakarta. Today I will briefly share Australia's approach enabling local development in the justice and security sector in Indonesia. Next.
Body, please your mic. Please your mic.
Oh yeah, sorry. For over 25 years, the Australian and Indonesian government have expressed their long-term commitment to supporting law and justice reforms. Beginning in 1996, Australia's support initially focused on building the capacity of legal institutions, improving legal education, and supporting legal reform process. Until now, there were a number of investments funded by the Australia's development program in this sector. And over time, the modalities have evolved from a focus on system strengthening and institutional linkages to expanding the role of research, partnering with civil society organizations, and undertaking prototypes, pilots, and demonstration projects. In 2023, the Australian Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, or DFAT, produced its localization practice note that places a strong focus on localization of Australia's assistance through partner government systems and local organizations. This is to ensure our efforts are informed by local knowledge, support local priorities, and contribute to local capacity and accountability. The adaptive strategies of Australia's support in this sector, combined with strategic patience, locally led approach, and strong partnership with the governments of Indonesia and CSOs, have been pivotal to its success. Next, please. The Australia-Indonesia Partnership for Justice is the flagship program of Australia's development investment in the law and justice sector. Currently, it is in the second phase with a total value of 74.5 million for 8 years. The objective of AIPJ is to strengthen Indonesia's justice and security institutions and contributing to the stability and prosperity of Indonesia and the regions. AIPJ activities, objective and activities are identified to align with the Indonesia's legal and justice sector, prioritize in the Indonesian medium terms development, as well as the Australia's development policy. AIPJ is partnering with more than 60 organizations and agencies that span from Indonesian ministries and agencies in legal and security, civil society organization, Australia whole of government partners, including court. AIPJ Phase 2 focuses on 7 policy priorities. Designed as a flexible and adaptive program, AIPJ has a unique focus on working largely through civil society to influence systemic reform in partnership with the government of Indonesia in highly sensitive areas. These include correction reform, access to justice for women and girls, and people with disabilities, preventing violent extremism, and preventing transnational crime. AIPJ also facilitates bilateral partnership between key judicial institutions, for example, those between the Supreme Court of Indonesia and both the Family Court of Australia and the Federal Court of Australia. Aligned with the Australian International Development Policy, AIPJ commits to support local leadership across different aspects of society, such as government, academia, and civil society. Over 80% of AIPJ partners are Indonesian organizations and institutions. AIPJ has utilized effective strategies and leveraged relationships to ensure that CSOs have been involved in all of the policy development processes. The principles of locally led development have been central in all program stages, including design, contracting, implementation, and monitoring, evaluation, and learning. The program governance arrangement is enable the Indonesian and Australian governments and CSOs to come together to set priorities, endorse annual work plans, review progress, and adjust the approach as needed. The way of AIPJ has contributed to this policy outcome is to embrace the role of a convener and a relationship broker, try to connect important CSO to important policymakers. This has been extremely well effective as the independent strategic review of AIPJ in 2023 has identified that AIPJ contributed to 46 Indonesian policies and guidance, including laws, policies, strategies, and action plans that deal with the sexual violence, child marriage prevention, family support post-divorce, human rights, preventing violent extremism, corruption, and so on, and a lot more. The program strategy supporting CSO and the governments of Indonesia coalitions to influence policy in inherently sustainable. The level of commitment to policy reform is evidenced by co-funding arrangements in many of the activities. Champions have been identified and supported, and the budget required for the implementation is included in the policy plans. An example of how EIPJ work is on supporting the restorative justice. EIPJ working at both national and subnational level. At the subnational level, EIPJ through the Asia Foundation since 2019 has been supporting the governments of Indonesia in promoting the implementation of restorative justice by conducting pilot projects in NTB and Makassar that promotes local practice to resolve disputes. Through this work, local partners become critical friends of local governments. Their advocacy was strengthened and resulted to several local regulations. For example, in Makassar, a civil society network called Forum Restorative Justice and led by LBH Makassar, supported by EIPJ, work in partnership with Makassar city governments to develop a local government regulations on the implementation of restorative justice. Having strong relationship at the national level, EIPJ and the Asia Foundation promote these models at the national level with relevant agencies such as the Kemenko Polhukam and Kemenkumham, and establish linkage to allow potential collaboration between central and local governments. In addition, EIPJ worked closely with the Kemenko Polhukam in developing roadmap for the implementation of restorative justice in Indonesia. A working group has been established by the Kemenko Polhukam with support from civil society organizations such as the IGRS, ICGR, LAPE, and CDS. So, trying to conclude the approach, locally approach that the Australia's government has been doing so far, there are several factors are driving the high level of localizations. One is long-term engagement and strategic patience. Australia's engagement in the law and justice space and willingness to be strategic in key reform areas provide EIPJ with a history to build, and this includes long-term partners, staff, and high regard of political economy analysis. Number two is highly committed and capable counterparts. Based on their long-term engagement, the government of Indonesia has a range of champions for EIPJ. EIPJ's government counterpart are widely regarded as extremely capable and express a strong political commitment and to successful reform initiative. And the last one, which is a very important one, is supportive coalitions of reformers. A coalition of reformers, including EIPJ's CSO partners and champions within the governments of Indonesia, such as Bappenas, provide the condition for strengthening localization and locally led reforms. This is supported by a network of advocacy that remain committed to improving access to law and justice for all. I think with that last part, I would like to thanks for this opportunity to share, and I will give it back to the moderator. Thank you.
Thank you, Bu Ade. Please give applause to Bu Ade Gani for the share of idea and thoughts. I noted some points that the Australian government has long collaborated with Indonesian government, not only at the national level, but IPG work is also carried out at the regional level. And the most important things is IPG also strengthens the consolidation of the CSO level. Thank you, Bu Ade, for the share. The next speaker is Tomika Stevens Peterson. Tomika currently resident legal advisor from the U.S. Department of Justice, Office of Overseas Prosecutorial Development, Assistance and Training, or OPDET. Please, Tomika, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. It's really an honor to be here to talk a little bit about some of the U.S. approaches towards the support in the justice sector reform. Obviously, justice sector reform is a high priority for the U.S., particularly given the fact that transnational organized crime does not care about borders. It crosses countries. So it's critically important that partners such as Indonesia and the US are working collaboratively together in justice sector reform. And supporting justice sector reform for the US, we've primarily been funding it through some of the efforts through USAID, which very much like our Australian partners, is very focused on pushing down grants to civil society organizations so that everything is locally led. But the majority of our international assistance and funding that goes directly to our justice sector counterparts is actually funded through the State Department, the U.S. Department of State, and primarily through two sections. The Bureau of Counterterrorism that focuses on building capacity when it comes to terrorism and terrorism financing, and the Bureau of International Narcotics and Law Enforcement, which is otherwise known as INL. INL is one of the biggest supporters for the Department of Justice and the work that we do providing technical assistance and capacity building here in Indonesia, whether it's with the ministries or with the Attorney General's office or the Corruption Eradication Commission, as well as many other ministries and agencies. So I'm going to spend the majority of my time telling you a little bit about the technical assistance that we provide to the justice sector actors through the U.S. Department of Justice. We primarily provide the assistance that includes discussions of how we have created different innovative financial mechanisms to support victims of crime through the U.S. Department's Office of Overseas Prosecutorial Development Assistance and Training that I work for, known as OPDAT, and the International Criminal Investigative Training Assistance Program, known as ICITAP. OPDAT and ICITAP, we work collaboratively with our criminal justice sector partners here in Indonesia. OPDAT, we typically focus on the judiciary and prosecutors, but we'll work in conjunction with ICITAP that focuses mostly on law enforcement and corrections. And our overall mission is really to build effective criminal justice institutions in the countries that we are represented. It's critically important that we have individuals with expertise on the ground for OPDAT and ICITAP. So we have long-term serving prosecutors and law enforcement that are in country and can work in parallel with our partners. We're very proud to say that OPDAT has had one of the longest serving programs here in Indonesia, established over 18 years ago and working in conjunction with the Attorney General's Office, the Corruption Eradication Commission, INP, the Supreme Court, the Financial Intelligence Unit for Indonesia, the Witness and Victim Protection Agency, and the National Counterterrorism Agency, just to name a few. And our expertise is very wide, and we cover a wide variety of different areas, from corruption to money laundering to gender-based violence, internet crimes against children, narcotics, and wildlife trafficking, just to name a few. But we work collaboratively across the U.S. Embassy, leveraging all of our expertise to be able to share it with our international partners here in Indonesia, be it with ICITAP, FBI, the Drug Enforcement Administration, Homeland Security Investigations, as well as other experts from the U.S. that we often bring to country as part of our capacity building programs. So just to give you a couple examples of our corruption-focused programming, which I think is very much relevant to the discussion about innovative financing, we have worked very closely in the asset forfeiture space to build capacity amongst the Attorney General's Office, the Corruption Eradication Commission, in order to maximize the returns in corruption through asset forfeiture. And this technical capacity is extremely important because we're able to share some of the tools that we use for really building our asset forfeiture fund, which is our really unique funding mechanism to make sure that victims are made whole from crimes where we are able to seize assets, but then also use our fund in order to support our asset forfeiture program. It works independent of our treasury, and we're able to pass along funds to support our U.S. Marshal Service and all of the various different law enforcement agencies, which is something that we've built into the technical assistance programs that we've offered to both AGO and COPICA, how to take asset forfeiture funds and be able to maximize them for the continued success of their programs. We've also worked collaboratively across Indonesia with programming focused in building asset tracing and recovery for prosecutors and investigators, not to mention our many programs focused on human trafficking, where we are bringing together and convening both CSOs, civil society organizations, and law enforcement so that they can work more collaboratively together. We're also working to make sure that information to help law enforcement fight crime in Indonesia is at its maximum. Our law enforcement partners at the U.S. Embassy are constantly working to provide information to law enforcement, including information to help address the issues of internet crimes against children. In addition, through the support from OPDAT, through the Department of Justice, the State Department also provides exchanges, information exchanges, which I think is critically important in building up the capacity here for Indonesia. For instance, the U.S. Department's premier professional exchange program called the International Visitor Leadership Program offers short visits to the U.S. for current and emerging foreign leaders. And each year, we support over 5,000 international visitors from various countries, including Indonesia. And we're very excited to be able to sponsor various different justice sector actors to go to America for the IVLP program. We are particularly proud that in the past 2 years, the U.S. Congress's International Leadership Exchange has been extended to Indonesian judges, where several have focused on going to the U.S. and learn about judicial rule of law and ethics, judicial security, and technology. But the importance of talking about technical assistance is critical because it's very important that we are working collaboratively with our partners. Our direct technical assistance gives that support directly to the Supreme Court, to the Attorney General's Office, to the Corruption Eradication Commission, and to all of the partners directly. And we are building it off of the needs and the gaps that are identified by our partners. So we want to make sure that the support we are providing is going directly where it's most needed. Additionally, one of the efforts that we find has increased our ability to increase capacity amongst our Indonesian counterparts is working with the various training centers so that the support that we are providing is not going to the individuals who are just at our programs, but you're able to enhance those institutions by building their existing curriculum to include effective international practices. And being able to convene individuals across the different justice sector agencies is also critically important. But as I stated earlier, the U.S. has discovered that we've made lots of mistakes over the years, and part of it is being able to share what has worked for us and frankly what has not worked for us, and being able to support Indonesia's criminal justice sector as they improve. And that includes, like I said, sharing about different funding mechanisms like our asset forfeiture fund, as well as some of our other funds that are devoted to victims of crime, and how we're able to fund those using our sentencing fines, our bail reform that has been confiscated, and being able to make sure that those go to the victims that are needed. So we are very excited to continue to partner with our Indonesian counterparts and to continue our efforts to build capacity in how we can assist in those areas. So I'll turn it back over to the moderator, and thank you for the time.
Thank you, Tomika. Please give applause to Tomika. I know that several points that the U.S. government supports technical assistance to many stakeholders in Indonesia, for example, like KPK, PPTK, BNN, and also the prosecutor's office, in order to strengthen and promote criminal justice reforms and also its institutions. Thank you, Tomika. The next speaker is Bu Damayanti Bukhori from Penabulu Foundation. Bu Damayanti will share the challenges and mechanism proposed to ensure sustainability and the collective empowerment of CSOs in the justice sector through trust fund of CSOs. Please, Bu Damayanti, your time.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you for inviting Penabulu in this stage together with all of you. So we were given the task to discuss about the innovative finance. So the title of the talk is about the evolution of trust funds in Indonesia, because I was working with Kahati several years ago, and then I became board of Penabulu, and so we've been thinking a lot about trust funds in Indonesia and how it could help civil society, especially for the justice sector. I think you all know what trust fund is. Basically, this is an idea that that there's a truster. A trust is it's a legal arrangement in which assets are managed by the trustee. And usually we see it in a family trust fund for education, public trust fund for supporting public welfare. And trust fund is actually not owned by anyone. And so why do we need a trust fund? Well, basically, it's a financing mechanism for programs that require relatively large costs on an ongoing basis. And you can use it for anything from elevation of poverty, community empowerment, education, natural disaster, sociocultural health problem, conservation, all other types of topics that you can think of. Okay, so what makes a trust fund different? Well, it's interesting that the truster, they do not manage the trust fund by themselves. The trustee is the one who usually define the trust in a more detail. But the trust fund itself is actually like a block grant mechanism. So it doesn't really give out specific detail, but you can, for instance, you want to put out a trust fund for your grandchildren. You know, that's the way that usually people set up a trust fund. So in Indonesia, over the years, we can see that there have been a development on several trust funds ideas. The first one is what we call an endowment fund. And this was actually given by USA to Kahati back in 1994, I think. And that was the birth of Kahati when United States didn't want to ratify the protocol, I think CBD, and so, okay, Indonesia, I'll give you 16.5 million. And yeah, so Kahati was born. So it is an endowment fund, and it will always be there, and the money is, the investment is what is being used, but the money itself has to stay there. And then there's also another type of trust, which is called the revolving fund. It's deposited, handed over to be managed on a revolving basis. So the money stays there, but the funds the funds can be used for many things, for loans, business, capital, etc. So the fund itself revolved, yeah, because it receives income from those that are being given the loan. The third one, sinking fund. A sinking fund atau dana menurun, it's handed over to be managed for program management and are mandated to be used in accordance with the agreed budget. Again, for this example, I would like to say the TFCA fund from the debt swap nature from USA to Indonesia. It's a sinking fund given to Indonesia for 20 million, 30 million, and it can be finished by 20 years, 10 years, what have you. The last one is a mixed trust fund. So this is a combination of the three forms of trust fund. So there are many trust funds. And the trust fund models in Indonesia, if one can see, actually there are the differences in, you look at the source and mechanisms, or you look at the purpose. So for the source and mechanism, there's a single donor trust fund, like the Kahati, and then the multi-donor trust fund. This is like, for instance, for Aceh, when there was a tsunami, so people just put in multi-donor trust fund and administered by the World Bank, for instance. And then there's a sector-specific trust fund. So this is like the TFCA or the MFP for forestry. And then there's an initiation trust fund and also public donation trust fund. The public donation trust fund is like for the zakat, the wakaf, yeah? So it's a public money given for charities, for instance. Initiation trust fund is something that started, WWF started a Sumatra Conservation Trust Fund, forgot how many years ago, early 2000, when they had a signing between 10 governors of Sumatra, and then they created the Sumatra Trust Fund. But it didn't really take off. So it was there, but I guess funding wasn't easy. And the next one is based on purpose. It's for education, it's for conservation, or it's for organizational capacity. Okay, so what here, you can see that there's a trust fund that is a conventional trust fund that started the regular trust fund. And now what we see, the evolution of the trust fund in Indonesia, is that we can see what is happening, that there is still the donor-based trust fund, and then there's what is called also a pooled fund, or a thematic initiative fund. And then the last one is a trust fund alliance, which I will be explaining a bit in detail. Okay, so again, the trust fund or donor base is the one that Kahati administered through the TFCA and then the Ananta Fund. And then Penabulu also have a trust fund for health. So this is funded through GF for TB, HIV. So this is a single trust fund dedicated for a certain issue. And then there's what is called the pooled fund. So this is a gathering of the funding based on theme. And here we can see the Nusantara Fund. So this is funding for Aman, for KPA, and forgot the other one. Aman, KPA, and sorry, Walhi. Okay, Walhi. So then they created a Nusantara Fund. So this is a pooled fund for a certain theme for indigenous people, okay? And for Penabulu, we also have this pooled fund, for instance, for disaster, then for women, and Lokadana is for civil society. Penabulu sees that the civic space in Indonesia is getting smaller and smaller. So we believe that we need to have a full funding for civil society, and so Lokadana was created for that. Now the interesting thing about this is that the Penabulu, we created the idea of the IDRF and the IWRF and then the Lokadana. So we created the pot, and then we go on to the donors and say, okay, we have this, would you be interested? So the EU has been interested to put in money for that. So this kind of fund is something that we created as an idea and then go for the fundraising, and yeah, so that's the pooled fund. The last one is called the Trust Alliance. This is something that Penabulu is still working on. So it's an idea of building alliance between different trust funds. So it's a pooled fund, independently managed by the organization who wants to become part of the alliance. And we're thinking of developing this for the Wallacea region, because the endemicity of the eastern part of Indonesia, where the conservation is very especially for a small island, it's threatened by climate change, threatened by all this mining, etc. So we foresee that there's a lot of conflict in the future, etc. So we need to have a pooled fund for Wallacea, but this is still in the making. Okay, so I think that's the end. Yeah, the end. So thank you.
Thank you, Bu Damayanti, for the share. I noted that there are several types of innovative trust fund in Indonesia, such as endowment funds, revolving funds, sinking funds, or mixed trust funds. And also it's divided based on source and mechanism and based on purpose. Okay, for the next speaker is Pak Gusman Nahya. Pak Gusman is the Executive Director of Perhimpunan Filantropi Indonesia. Pak Guzman will share the role and challenges of the philanthropic sector in empowering civil society to advance social justice and reduce social inequalities. Pak Guzman, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to thank you for the committee for inviting us here to meet with all the new friends and colleagues together and discussing critical issues concerning innovative financing. But I would like to start from a different angle in our discussion where everyone and the moderators here talking about the instruments of investment that can be used as an access. But for me, being the representative from the Philanthropy Association, I'd like to give you some highlights on the characteristics of philanthropies in Indonesia and how do they work and how do they invest their monies and how they invest in all those instruments in Indonesia as well as even in the global side. Well, first I'd like to start with the philanthropy landscape that I think everybody are well aware that the survey of the charity seed foundations in the World Giving Index has declared Indonesia as the most generous country in the world. And this has happened in the last 6 years. It has been driven by 3 indicators, which is donating monies, volunteering time, as well as the third one is helping strangers. And that's where we are right now. It shows that how big potential it is we have in the society in Indonesia, that we are very generous people in Indonesia. I think it was the 2 factors that we're talking about, the religious norms as well as the cultural norm that we have with our own collective actions, or what we call gotong royong. And we can see this as a very huge potential to see in how we should be able, the society directly, being philanthropists or being donors, can contribute to actually in accelerating sustainable development goals in Indonesia. As we are well aware that the funding gaps after the COVID is increasing, and we really need to work out together all aspects of the society to contribute in accelerating the achievements of those goals. Typologically, I'd like to share with you on how the philanthropy organizations are available in Indonesia, as well as even in global. When we talk about the categories of typologies, we have the grant makers, which usually provide the funds to organizations. We have the intermediaries, where these kind of philanthropic organizations collect public funds and as well as distribute the funds through the philanthropic activities. And the third one is the implementers, who used to be the recipients of philanthropy funds from the grant makers or the intermediary. And the category base of the funding source, I think we're aware that we have the family foundation or family philanthropy. It's been driven by the missions of the personal or family funds for philanthropic mission. The other thing is the corporate philanthropy, where corporate philanthropy comes from the philanthropic actions of corporate and it can be in the terms of CSR funds, or even having it under the corporate foundations. The next one would be the independent philanthropy or even the community philanthropies. I think this is most major, that most of them are the implementers, where organizations have their own missions and their priorities in delivering the activities. And one of the biggest chunk that we have in Indonesia is actually the religious or the faith-based philanthropy. If you are aware that we have zakat, infak, sedekah, we have also the perpuluhan in the Christianity. We have also organizations like Buddha Suci, as well as another religious base, which collect funds from the society as well as distributing it with their specific religious purposes. Sharing about the philanthropy transformations, I think this was in our research in 2022, where the area of progress that we see that we have a traditional model of donations and philanthropy in Indonesia, and what happens really is, because we are becoming an emerging country, we'll try to be a one society, global society, and which we're transforming also with the modern model of philanthropies in Asia. The trend is about the corporate philanthropy, where the corporate philanthropy that we see that usually in the forms of the CSR programs are more in the focus of creating impacts or transformations in their supports to the development activities. The other thing is the transformations of family foundations, which is usually came from the corporate philanthropy and separate in the family foundations or family philanthropy, and their focus of funds has been separated with the nature of the business of the owners of the family, and they have the flexibility to invest in whatever it is that they feel become their priorities and see from the board perspective or the owner's perspective or the founder's perspective. The third trend is also about raising funds, which we say that is the fundraising innovations. You can see lots of numbers of crowdfunding organizations or platforms available in Indonesia. It is an increasing trend. It's a very huge movement, very huge contributions as well as distributions of funds. And the other one, the last one, is how philanthropy contribute to sustainable development goals. This is what we see that it is very important in doing philanthropy works, creating purposes, and hopefully develop impacts towards the society. We see that almost 89% of philanthropy organizations, from what we surveyed during this report, is actually already streamlining their work towards achieving the sustainable development goals. This is the outlook, the philanthropy outlook key findings report. We just issued this a couple of months ago. This is where the philanthropy invests their funds into the numbers of priorities. If you see that, still in Bahasa, but we're talking about economic environment. The second sector is education. The third sector is health. The fourth sector is climate and environment. And the fifth sector is poverty eradications, as well as the others. So this is where most of the philanthropy organizations are investing their funds. If you see that we're talking about social justice, it's not that it's not there, it is there, because we see that sustainable development and social justice is always interlinked in whether it is whatever sectors that we're doing. You can see also 89% of the respondents admit that the institutions align the programs to SDGs. This is also the 69% respondents admit the institution has committed to climate change. I think these two are the most major agendas that is now in trend. Of course, other national agendas we're talking about, extreme poverty, stunting, things which is all integrated within this area. So now I'm talking about what is philanthropy in Indonesia. I tell you, we have philanthropy in Indonesia as an association. Our job, there are two major roles that we have. One is to to strengthen the ecosystem of philanthropy, to enable organizations, philanthropy organizations, to perform and act effectively more better compared to, and contribute creating more impacts. And the second one is to promote collaborations and co-creations among philanthropy organizations, as well as the development partners. We have 210 more members, from individuals, from non-government organizations, foundations, as well as corporations. You see the diversity that we have in our membership is actually to ensure that we can always meet in one place and think about catalyzing collaborations among our members to work together. And we have the 4 centers that of our, this would be the last slide. We have 4 centers in doing such. We have many activities that want to support the ecosystem, like regulations, promoting capacity building for CSO organizations. We have also database directory of CSOs and organizations, philanthropy organizations that can be accessed among the public, as well as we are working towards advocating regulations to support the strengthening ecosystem of philanthropy, including tax incentive and the donation bills that we need to. And the other last thing is when we try to push more collaborations about our members, I think this is a good momentum for us. It's impossible for philanthropy to work by itself. It is very important for collaborations with other stakeholders, including private sectors, CSOs, academicians, as well as the government, in order for us to create more impacts in our work. I think my time is up. Maybe that's it. Thanks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pak Gusman. Please give applause to Pak Gusman. I noticed several points that there are many typologies of philanthropy actors in Indonesia and are divided based on organizational categories such as grain makers, intermediaries, and implementers, and also it's divided based on funding sources. Please give applause to all the speakers for sharing the thoughts, ideas, and give us the new knowledge. We still have more or less 10 minutes to continue to Q&A session. I will open up to 1 or 2 questions, maybe from Bapak Ibu, jika ada pertanyaan. 1 question, okay, 1 question. Also, the panitia said it's 1 question. Please, if there is any questions.
Ya,
okay,
terima
please,
kasih atas, berdiri.
Please mention your name and institution.
Terima kasih atas waktu yang diberikan. Saya Budawati dari Lembaga Bantuan Hukum Bali Women Crisis Center. Saya ingin bertanya terkait dengan pemaparan di awal bahwa mekanisme restitusi yang dibicarakan. Saya ingin bertanya apakah kemudian kasus yang dilaporkan itu sudah termasuk kasus KBGU, karena dari tahun-tahun sekarang itu adalah kasus yang marak. Kami dampingi adalah kasus kekerasan berbasis gender online. Pertanyaan saya, kalau kemudian terkait restitusi, sementara kemudian pelaku tidak bisa kami identifikasi, dan kemudian parahnya adalah korban terdampak sangat luar biasa, baik itu secara psikis maupun materinya. Itu yang ingin saya sampaikan. Terima kasih kepada Ibu Ade Geni bahwa memberikan kami bantuan terkait dengan pemberian air bersih untuk masyarakat kami di Konyal dari Konsulat Australia. Juga saya adalah salah satu IVLV. Terima kasih Bu Tomiko atas bantuan dan juga dukungannya selama ini. Terima kasih.
We only limited to 1 question, sorry Mr. Rianto. Maaf Bu, tadi namanya siapa Bu, dari mana?
Saya Budawati dari LBH Bali Women Crisis Center.
Terima kasih Bu Budayati. Mungkin pertanyaan akan dijawab oleh Mbak Aisyah dan Bu Ade Gani. Oke, Mbak Aisyah, please.
Baik, terima kasih Bu Dayanti. Tadi pertanyaan pertama terkait apakah datanya termasuk kepada kasus-kasus KBGO ya Bu. Untuk data yang kami paparkan tadi, utamanya adalah kasus-kasus pelecehan seksual dan juga pemerkosaan yang masuk dari data-data LPSK dan juga Komnas Perempuan. Dan juga untuk pertanyaan yang kedua terkait bagaimana jika pelakunya tidak bisa diidentifikasi, seperti itu ya Bu tadi untuk yang kedua. Inilah salah satu tujuannya juga dengan adanya Victim Trust Fund ini adalah untuk mengatasi hal-hal demikian. Karena seperti yang sudah saya jelaskan tadi, awalnya diterapkannya Victim Trust Fund ini adalah untuk kasus-kasus terorisme dalam hal misalnya pelakunya hilang atau pelakunya meninggal dunia, maka di situ korban masih tetap bisa mendapatkan pemulihan melalui Victim Trust Fund ini. Jadi nanti kalau misalkan dilihat kembali di aturan yang berlaku saat ini di Undang-Undang TPKS pun juga di Victim Trust Fund ini ada 2, jadi ketika pelaku tidak bisa membayar restitusi maka pembayaran akan melalui Victim Trust Fund untuk korban, dan yang kedua korban itu juga bisa mengajukan dana pemulihan. Jadi sifatnya pengajuan yang kedua. Jadi kalau ketika pelaku tidak bisa teridentifikasi, mungkin mekanisme yang kedua itu bisa mengatasi hal tersebut. Mungkin kurang lebih itu Ibu. Terima kasih.
Terima kasih Basha. Is there any additional from all the other speakers? No? Okay, maybe this time we will close the great discussion. Before we close this forum and I asking all the speakers to provide closing statements, I will give a short conclusion that innovative financing mechanism can be created, one of which is through collaboration between the government and GSOs to share new ideas in mutually supportive work. This collaboration can be enhanced through the government partnership that currently exists. Therefore, OGP needs to continue to be encouraged and strengthened at the national level and also at the local levels through the co-creation between the government and GSOs. For the closing, I will ask each speakers to give closing statement. Start from Baisha.
Okay, thank you for my closing statement. Victim Trust Fund is one of the forms of the innovative financing. And for the collaboration, I think it is important the implementing regulation for the Victim Trust Fund. So the Victim Trust Fund can be implemented, and it is necessary to involve civil society in the formation of the implementing regulation through an open government partnership mechanism. That's all for me. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So when we talk about the judicial, so I think there are involved a lot of sector issues. So that's why maybe for this thing, let's say if we talk about the judicial related to the environmental issue, so we can use the Indonesian Environment Fund as a trust fund. And right now we are collaborating with the Ministry of Environment and Forestry to handle recovery environmental fund from environmental crime. So at this point, all of us do expect can deliver the fund to the recovery fund with the multi-years measure. I think that's all from our side.
Australian government is committed to implement the locally led development programs. It is part of the requirements in our development programs, and it's not only in the justice sector, but also in other areas as well. As we have here, our friend from Inklusi, they are working with 13 partners, CSOs partners, and they are also part of the one of the important players in the Australian government's development programs that delivered their work through the civil society and implementing the locally led development. So we are happy to provide you with a lot of information about how we implement the locally led fund, and we are looking forward to working with civil society partners, government partners to really strengthen your work in the justice sector. Thank you.
Well, the U.S. is going to continue to prioritize our technical assistance to the justice sector. In particular, we are very much focused on identifying the needs and the gaps for all of the ministries and the law enforcement agencies and the courts that we work with. And by doing that capacity building, we're able to pass along some of the ways in which we fund the support for victims of crime. So we are really looking forward to continuing the partnership with Indonesia when it comes to providing direct technical assistance and maximizing the efforts that Indonesia can make in strengthening its own justice sector efforts. And that obviously is going to improve the relationships between Indonesia and all the countries across the world as we continue this fight against transnational organized crime. So thank you so much for inviting the U.S. Department of Justice here today in order to share our engagements with Indonesia.
Looking into the future, we don't know what the new government will be like. Yeah. A lot of people say that the shrinking civic space may be coming. So it's even more important that CSO and innovative financing becomes one of the agenda, a very important agenda for the CSO. So with that, I think there should be a tightly link between the CSO and looking to the future together, how a victim trust fund can be created and other types of trust fund to enable that the civic space will be ensured no matter what the government will be like in the future. Thank you.
Like I said, there's lots of instruments already available in Indonesia. And the funding comes from all sectors, including one sector from the philanthropic sector. It's not that, it's not only the CSO that need to be developed on their capacity to be able to run, implement, and raise funds from funding sources, but also the philanthropy sector itself needs to be educated about the sectors, the important sectors. If you see that we have lots of sectors that are in favor, but it is also important that the other sectors which are not in favor needs to step up. And so we should be able to support because they are the same equal importance compared to the other sectors. And that's why the philanthropy in Asia is always opening opportunities for us to collaborate and co-create. It's not that we are the funders, we are actually, philanthropy is actually a development agent to support improving development. Thank you for me.
Thank you, Pak Gusman. Please give one more applause to all the speakers. By this, I close this forum and give back to Master of Ceremony.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, and all the distinguished speakers. So, ladies and gentlemen, as we conclude our panel discussion, I would like to extend a heartfelt thank to our esteemed speakers and to all of the active participation. Your insight and contribution have been invaluable. On behalf of Indonesia Judicial Research Society, Open Society Foundation, and Ministry of National Development Planning of Indonesia, we really appreciate your presence and support, and have a great day, and we look forward to seeing all of you in the future events. Thank you and goodbye.